Sonic Adventure is great. It's really great. I love the freedom that I get from basically having level design as Sonic that allows me to perfectly take advantage of the fact that it's a 3D environment. Because I can basically look around with the camera. Like, that's another thing, there's actual camera control in that game, which is something you don't really have in the more modern games. I love Red Mountain. That is easily the pinnacle of 3D Sonic level design. At least until the booster anyways, but we'll get to that. What I love about Red Mountain is that there's so many different shortcuts you can take, mainly from taking advantage of spin dash jumping, because, okay, there's a platform all the way over there. Now I could take the long way and walk around a curving path to get to it, or I could spin dash jump over a bottomless pit and get to it in a much cooler fashion. And not only is it about spin dash jumping, which is the primary method of taking shortcuts in that game, but there's also shortcuts where you hold down and right after using a rocket. And there's even a shortcut where you can jump off the side of a mountain to the left of you and not have to spiral around a mountain. I just love Red Mountain so much, and even Act 2 with its badass atmosphere and music, and the camera perfectly works exactly the way you want to create the atmosphere. And even there, the spin dash jump works perfectly for getting over to the platforms quicker. Red Mountain is why I love Sonic Adventure when it comes to Sonic gameplay. And Tails, easily the best alternate gameplay the franchise has ever had. I love the satisfying feeling of taking shortcuts through Sonic's levels using Tails' flight. Now some people may complain that Tails wasn't taken advantage of properly because the levels weren't designed around him. He was just plopped into Sonic's levels. My response to that is that the sheer fact that you already experienced the levels of Sonic makes it a lot more satisfying playing through them as Tails, because you can break them. Like, you can take so many different shortcuts. And besides, some levels really do feel like they were designed for Tails. Like, Speed Highway as Tails? That works great for Tails too. Like, sure, Windy Valley can be completed in one jump. It's better for Sonic because it's all about running in straight lines. It's more like SA2 level design, only a bit too narrow because they're always hugging the sides of the wall. But I really wish that Tails' gameplay from SA1 came back. I mean, I love the boost gameplay so much because of how thrilling it is that I'm okay with Adventure Sonic gameplay never coming back. Although, if their excuse is that Sonic has the boost now and why would he lose it, then there's no reason they can't give the Adventure Sonic gameplay to Shadow, or, well, he has all the abilities of Sonic, but can't they just give it to another character like Espio? I mean, there's no proof that he has the boost, and he played like Sonic and Sonic Heroes, so why can't he just keep that and, or at least let us play as Tails, and then we'd have the SA1 gameplay, and if you had the spin dash and spin dash jump, then we'd have the Adventure Sonic gameplay back too. Of course, the question there would be, why would you use spin dash jump if you could fly? I guess you'd have to nerf it. Never mind. And then there's Gamma. Even though shooting is pretty anti-Sonic, I really do love his gameplay. Like, I feel like such a powerful badass just targeting a whole bunch of enemies at once and getting so much time. Like, the time down mechanic is kind of weird. Like, what, does Gamma run out of batteries? But it really does make for making it a lot more satisfying, racking up points by defeating a whole bunch of enemies at once. Because with the mechs, all you got was points for rank. And who cares about ranks? Ranks in Sonic games don't even really mean skill most of the time. It's not like they're entirely based on how fast you beat the level. But Gamma knew how to make the gameplay satisfying. Not only did it reward you for targeting a whole bunch of enemies rather than just running past them, but it also controlled well, because it was so fluid. You could just run in a circle easily. You got a running mode, like a mode change, where you would start flying along the ground to move faster. Although the levels generally didn't have you moving in a straight line long enough to take advantage of that. It was usually just a hub world thing. The level design for Gamma didn't really make you feel that you were slower than Sonic. Only if you managed to get Gamma into Sonic's levels did you feel that he was slower than Sonic. But because the level design for him was designed around him, and the gameplay was so focused on taking advantage of what he was good at, shooting, you didn't really care that he was slower than Sonic. That's how it should be. I also loved how he could float in the air. Like, that was really cool. I don't know why he didn't start out with that ability. Same goes for the mechs in SE2. Unfortunately, Adventure is also pretty infamous for a bunch of other terrible gameplay styles. Now, Knuckles is the best of it because he has level design and gameplay based entirely around his abilities. He would obviously completely break a 3D game because he can glide infinitely. I mean, he slowly goes down, yes, but if you jumped up from a high incline, you'd be able to just glide for a really long time, and it would be boring because you would just be gliding and that was it. It's not nearly as fun as flying. I guess because flying is faster, stuff like that. Like, you get to fly through dash rings. I don't know why you immediately stop right after getting that burst of speed for them. That's really lame, but other than that, I don't know. I don't think Knuckles would really work in 3D, so that's why they needed to give him the treasure hunting aspect, because that was the only way they could have level design that properly takes advantage of how he can glide and climb, because they just make him an exploration character. And in order to add replayability, they have the locations of the Emerald Shards randomized. And the Emerald hunting works because he's a guardian of the Master Emerald, so he's looking for the Emerald pieces. The problem is that some of the Emerald Shards can be in really annoying and obtuse places. Like, there's one that's apparently to the right of the vault in Casinopolis. I have no idea how I'm supposed to get it to this day, and every time an Emerald Shard spawns there, I end up restarting and trying again. Sometimes the Emerald Shards can put in really obnoxious places, like, it's not always intuitive where you should dig exactly, although that problem gets a lot more horrendous in SA2. In SA1, you usually just dig in the center of the rings and it's fine. In Lost World, however, you dig right in front of a tiny pillar sticking out of the ground, but there's multiple pillars, so it's kind of confusing. Plus, it's a vertical level. Like, the radar doesn't really do well with vertical. It doesn't really do well with the Y-axis, because it can tell you that an emerald is close to you on the Z and X-axis, but if an emerald's right above you, you're not going to know it. So you're not going to know that you can just climb straight upwards and get it. The treasure hunting mission in Sonic Generations was infinitely better than the treasure hunting in the adventure games. Even if it was a bit too easy, I really liked it. Like, I liked how there was always an arrow above your head pointing exactly where you should go. And there's more, like, I don't think there should be more Emerald Shards than you need to get in the level, because that wouldn't really make any sense story-wise. It would be kind of stupid, but just don't put them in annoying places. Don't make it impossible to tell where exactly you should dig to get them. And obviously don't completely screw up the radar so that there's no blue emerald detecting anymore, and that you can detect all of them at once. And don't make it so that there's no radar at all like in 06. Treasure hunting's not doomed from the start, it's just that it's entirely based on luck whether you love it or not. Because if you're lucky, then there's no problem for you, but if you get a bad randomizing thing, if you get bad RNG, you're going to take a while finding all of the Emerald Shards. So ultimately, it's not a very good gameplay style. And then you get to Amy, who's so slow and her acceleration is so terrible and wonky. Then you get to Big, who's extremely awful in every way. The camera does not really, there's no actual first-person view, so it's hard to find Froggy. And just getting Froggy to grab the lure is a task all by itself. Now, I would love the fishing if it was like Twilight Princess, but it just isn't. Fishing can be done right, and if it was fun, then I would like it even if it is stupid for it to be mandatory in a Sonic game. But it just wasn't. I hate how just tapping the analog stick even the slightest bit sends it flying a million yards away in a direction you didn't even press. Why can't it just move a tiny bit to lure the fish? And why do fish grab the lure when you don't want them to, when you only want to catch Froggy to end the mission? Why can't the fish just be restricted to the extra missions? Because literally everything about Big's gameplay is broken every way. I hate the red bar mechanic and how you lose a life if the lure breaks. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, I don't know how Big would get another fishing lure, but still. As for the story, obviously the adventure games have the best story in the franchise. There's no doubting that. There's the best emotional impact, there's exciting things going on. I don't understand why people say the story is convoluted when, I mean, I never had any trouble understanding it. Sure, it involves a whole bunch of different characters and their perspectives on things, but even if it was confusing, you see repeated cutscenes so much that you think that it would be better into your head by now. I don't know. I never really found it confusing at all. It's pretty easy to understand what's going on. I love the character arcs. Like, I love how it develops Amy's character beyond being a stalker with a crush. In fact, she barely ever chases after Sonic at all. She just, even in fact in the Japanese script, they barely even mention that she has a crush on Sonic at all. She just likes him and that's it. The story is about her being caring and idealistic enough to help a simple bird, while Sonic is focused on saving the world. She's the heart and soul of the group. Her job is to do the talking. That's why she talked to Gamma and got him to redeem himself. Well, not redeem himself, more like just free his family. You know what I mean. The weird thing is that people say that Tails has a character arc where he gets more independent and secure with himself. But I never really saw that. He was acting so bratty for most of the game, and he had no problem with doing stuff on his own. Like that very last line right before Speed Highway seemed to come completely out of nowhere. For most of the game, he was confident. Like, Sonic said to him at the beginning of the game, "Long time no see," implying that Tails had spent a long time without Sonic already, and it was no big deal to him. I guess this was the first time he was the hero of the world, fighting against Eggman by himself. Except he battled an entire army of birds in Tails' Adventure, but whatever. I guess he was like 3 years old when it happened, so he doesn't remember it anymore. Point is, I love this game. I wish they gave another shot at it, but I'm happy with the Boost games for now. And after Sonic Adventure 2 came Sonic Heroes. A game that I'm really glad that I played, because if I didn't, I would have kept believing the majority opinion that it's worse than Adventure 2 and it's just not a very good game. Honestly, I was really surprised at how much I liked it, because everyone kept saying that it got worse after Adventure 2, and I was like, Adventure 2 isn't really that great now that I've looked more critically at it. Like, it's okay, but not really that good, especially not compared to Adventure 1. So, I used to think that Heroes wasn't even worth playing because it was said to be worse. But now that I've played it, it's actually a pretty good game. The main complaint people have with Heroes is the controls. And I'll admit the controls aren't supernaturally tight like they are in Adventure 2 and Adventure 1, which is slightly better. But just because they're not as good doesn't mean that they're terrible, atrocious bullshit. Like, I went to Heroes after spending a really long time playing Sonic Generations, and it controls like a dream compared to that. It helps that I was finally able to play with the GameCube analog stick again, because I just think the GameCube analog stick is better than the Xbox 360 one. It feels less stiff. Because it's more sensitive, I don't have to move my finger as much to make my character move the way I want, and so I don't end up overcompensating and turning too sharply and stuff. But anyways, the controls, occasionally they get slippery. Like, sometimes you'll get launched by a ramp, and you'll land on the ground after being in the air, and you'll burst forwards. But here's the thing. You can just turn around and jump, and that'll cancel out all your momentum. You'll slow to start really quickly. And the vast majority of the time, it doesn't even matter. Because, one, the level design is designed around the controls. Generally, it's very wide open space. Like, it's not narrow like, say, SA1's Emerald Coast. Because if you go play the Emerald Coast mod for Sonic Heroes PC, you'll see that, yeah, it is actually pretty narrow. Something you don't notice with the more precise controls of SA1. But in Heroes, the level design is actually pretty wide open, so it doesn't really matter, because you're not constantly expected to squeeze into narrow corridors and precisely navigate yourself into them. So it's more, the level design accounts for the fact that sometimes you can move a bit too far in a direction. And another thing is, because the level design is designed around the controls. So most of the time when you're in those moments of slipperiness, there's walls to stop you. Like, the biggest example of the slipperiness I can find is after you're launched from a ramp onto one of the square platforms in Ocean Palace, like near the end of Team Rose's version of the level. None of that ever matters because you're always going to be stopped by the walls that are completely surrounding the inside of the platform. And even when there aren't walls to stop you, generally your character is going to stop at the edge of the platform. Like, they're going to do a almost falling off the platform animation. That's going to save you. So I barely ever died to, like, occasionally you can cling on to your momentum a bit too much, but for the most part, I barely ever died. Like, I can count the amount of times I died to slippery controls on one hand. In fact, I'm struggling to think of any times that I actually did. And I've done 2 full playthroughs of this game by this point. Now that may seem not very much to most people, but keep in mind that if a flaw of a game is really bad, then you're going to experience it on the first 2 playthroughs. If it's not really that big of a deal, then the playthroughs where you're most likely to run into it, the first 2, if you don't run into that flaw when you're first playing the game, it's not really that big of a deal. So the level design is wide open enough, there's plenty of walls everywhere. And another thing is, you'd think that slightly slippery controls would affect the platforming negatively, make you overshoot your jumps and stuff. But because of the fact that you can switch to a flight formation at any time you want with the press of a button, you can just fly and you'll be fine. Like, it's a very good way to cheese platforming. You never have to worry about getting your platforming wrong because you can just fly. Now, granted, the flight is gimped compared to SA1. You can't fly ridiculously far, and it's also pretty slow. It don't really matter because I don't mind that the flight character is slow, because I'm focusing on getting my platforming right. So that's the thing, the speed character is fast, that's what it's good for, and the flight character is about flight. So it's not going to be fast, it doesn't need to be. And the power character, well, I really don't like the fact that the power character is slow. Like, at the end of Seaside Hill, when I'm sent down a narrow speed section, and one of those things that automatically changes your character, changes me to Knuckles, usually I switch back to Sonic so I can run up to the blocks faster. Even though the whole reason they switch you to Knuckles is so that you can break the blocks without having to switch at all. I just don't think he's fast enough. But that's not a big deal because, like, I don't think, like, the power type is so slow that I don't feel like playing as him most of the time. I tried to play most of Team Chaotix as just a power type to switch things up, but I just couldn't stand how he's not fast enough. So I don't understand how people can mostly play the game as a power type, and, like, sure, the power type and the flight type control perfectly, but they're so slow that you don't want to use them. So you want to use the speed type, which is faster, and does, like, hold on to their momentum. Like it's weird. People love momentum in Sonic games. That's why they demonize Sonic 4 so much. But when you put momentum in Sonic Heroes, so much momentum in fact that in Grand Metropolis, one of the most satisfying things to do is to jump off the top of a slope and have your momentum carry you through the air into Rainbow Rain. That is so satisfying. That's such a classic Sonic thing to do. But for some reason, having that momentum translate to a 3D game causes people to hate it and say that it has slippery controls. Like, there are people who hate on Heroes just because they think the controls are absolute garbage, and I was shocked right from the very beginning playing it that this is actually not that bad. Like, I just tried it out on Dolphin just to see if it was really that bad, because I got in the mood that I really wanted to try the game out to see if it was good or not, because I knew 3 people, well, I didn't know them, but they were YouTube personalities, who liked the game. Eventually I couldn't stand anymore. I wanted to see if they were right, and from Seagate alone, the controls weren't that bad. They're certainly a lot better than the Boost games, that's for sure. And that's a pretty low standard, but still. So, in general, the big reason why I like Sonic Heroes is because there's so much that you can do in the levels because of the 3-character gameplay. It's not just about jumping. It's also got all sorts of gimmicks like punching flip panels to launch you, and breaking the floor beneath you and breaking cracked walls. And you can also use the Thunder Shoot to flip panels that are far away from you. That's the thing about Sonic Heroes, is that even though it has tons of different characters, it only has really one core gameplay style, no matter which team you play. Every team has the same basic concept of speed, flight, and power. There are minor differences between the different types of characters, like SBO, the speed type, can turn invisible and always clings to walls to triangle jump, which is the coolest wall jump we've had in 3D, by the way. And Sonic can't do any of that. And Amy has an actual projectile tornado attack. So she can just stand there without even having to go to the center of the arena in the character battles. Which suck, by the way. I don't know how you're supposed to know when you first play the game that you have to go to the center and spam the tornado attack to win. If you don't know to do that, then it's going to be a giant clusterfuck. But if you know what to do, it's really not a problem at all, and it's one of my favorite bosses in the game, in fact. Bosses should be easy. The big problem with the bosses in this game is that they're just mind-numbingly boring, like with spamming the homie attack on the... I forget the names. The first boss and the Rail Canyon boss. That's all you do with multiple health bars and just spam the homie attack. And the character battles obviously suck. And there's also the robot storms, which really suck. You're just fighting the same enemies you've been fighting all game. And they can last a really long time. But yeah, about earlier, there is really only one gameplay style, and that's what makes this better than Sonic Adventure 2, in my opinion. Is that it sticks to one good gameplay style instead of constantly forcing you to switch to stupid treasure hunting that can take like 10 minutes, or forcing you to play cheap mech levels with clunky turning controls. Although, thankfully, you can actually do a physics mod on SA2 so that you can jump higher with the mech, and so like you can jump higher and move a little faster, so it feels a bit more like Gamma. And if you combine that with the Superforms code, with the Superforms mod, or have invincibility code, you can actually sort of make the mech levels fun. You're not constantly getting cheap shotted, and you jump better. But that still doesn't make it worth it, the fact that you're constantly forced to switch to inferior gameplay styles to Sonic's, which is already gimped as all hell because of the spin dash nerf. Like, you don't really have the spin dash in Sonic Heroes, but arguably, in my opinion, what you have instead is actually better, because basically, the replacement for the spin dash in this game, I think a lot of people don't know how to use it right. What you're supposed to do is supposed to hold forwards and hold down B and release it while you're still running forwards. Don't try to use it from a standstill. It's not how it's supposed to work. You basically hold B and release it while running down a narrow speed section, like sections of the level that are dedicated to speed. And there you go, you just burst forwards, and you don't have to stand still and charge it up. It's basically the super peel out if it didn't force you to stop to charge it up. So it's what the super peel out should have been from the very beginning. There's a lot of times when I'll use the Rocket Excel, just because I want to burst forwards to burst the speed. I want to move faster, and although people complain about the speed type being too fast, I honestly don't always think that. So I use the Rocket Excel all the time because I want to be faster. I use it in loop-de-loops and stuff like that, and it's barely ever killed me. Like, I can count the amount of times that the Rocket Excel has killed me on one hand. Maybe 2 times. I think those few times I was either using it in places I wasn't supposed to, or I used it by accident in a character battle, and so I flew off the tiny arena to my death. Because I was trying to use a tornado attack, and I guess I didn't jump first. I think the game, because of its stupid combat focus, it would have been better if it had other attacks for Sonic, like if it had the light speed attack for the speed types. Instead, you have the power type there, and like, it really does feel like the power type was just arbitrarily forced in, because most of what the power type does, you could have very easily had Sonic do. like, the bounce attack could have been mapped to the X button, and you could have used it to break floors that are below you. And you could have just homing attacked into those flip panels rather than having to punch them. I feel like maybe the whole reason they had the multiple health bar enemies there is to try to arbitrarily justify the power type inclusion. Because they could have very easily just had a game based around just Sonic and Tails. And that would have been cool. Instead you have Big the Cat hanging around Team Rose because you have to have a power type there. But I think this game really did suffer from the combat focus. At the very least, it does combat better than any Sonic game with combat focus because it has so many different ways of attacking the enemies. And enemies that force you to use different strategies against them, so you're not just home attacking them all the time. Like there's thunder shooting enemies. Like you have to thunder shoot flying enemies. And sometimes there are enemies that you have to stun with a thunder shoot and then use a power type attack against them. Although I really wish the game actually told you you had to do that, instead of like taking until Team Dark and Team Chaotix for me to finally realize how I was supposed to handle them. I used to think those gray armored enemies were invincible except for the Team Blast. And I've still never defeated those giant hammer swing enemies without Team Blast. Well, I did a few times by accident while trying to use the Team Blast building up glitch. Because your characters they're running all over the place and attacking while you're doing that glitch. And so you've got to turn around with them constantly to avoid them falling off the cliff and stuff. Because for some reason when you switch characters, you move forwards automatically. Which can get annoying in Robot Storms where you don't want to automatically switch a character off to your death. But yeah, I think it would have been better if there wasn't a combat focus in this game. Even though it does variety the combat well, even though the enemy variety isn't great looking because they're all egg pawns and egg wizrobes, I guess, and the thunder shooting enemies. But I think it would have looked a lot better if all the enemies were badniks, because then they would have been based on different animals and been suited to the specific setting. It would have felt more like there was variety in the enemies, even if they're all just the same, like there's thunder shoot enemies, homing attacking enemies, and power type enemies. But yeah, the combat focus really shouldn't have been there. I mean, if you want to have detailed combat with that's taking advantage of the unique gameplay style, then good. But don't force it on us. Because for most of the time, it doesn't force you to attack enemies. I mean, you're rewarded for it by occasionally you can level up your character that way. It really should be like every time you defeat an enemy, your character gets experience points towards a level up. It shouldn't be randomly enemies will drop level up icons for specific characters. That's not enough of motivation for me to kill every enemy. What, a better rank? I don't care about that. Ranks are arbitrary in Sonic. But yeah, they shouldn't force combat down your throat. They shouldn't have doors that only open when you defeat enemies. That's not Sonic-like. The only time I can think of it happening in the classics was in Sonic CD when you had to jump into Firefly enemies that would send lasers directly below them, and you had to jump into them from below to attack them. Yeah, that's not cheap at all. They were the real final boss of the game. But anyways, like, I agree with a lot of the criticisms about Sonic Heroes. I don't like the fact that they force you to do combat. The controls aren't supernaturally tight. Oh my god, how dare they? And, well, they complain about a kiddie tone, but there's only a few lines that are awful. Like, the ones where they say Sonic Heroes. Like, because we're Sonic Heroes. What kind of a response to Metal Sonic losing is that? And the character battle cutscenes make the story look a lot worse than it actually is. Because the character battles are just there because they were there in the adventure games. They're so sloppily written, there's no reason for any of these friends to be fighting each other. But they make up arbitrary excuses for them fighting anyways, and it's just rife with bad writing. Sonic isn't incredibly happy that Shadow is still alive, even a fanfiction writer would write it like that. So, yeah. And that's just one example. Why did Team Chaotix try to steal cheese when they already had all 10 Chow from the previous mission? Why did Eggman send the Chaotix on missions at all? Like, that just wastes time that they could have spending all their time going to him, and he could have gotten rescued sooner. Not to mention, he was trapped in a room by Metal Sonic for 3 days in a row without food, water, or a bathroom, most importantly. So that must have really sucked for him. And the fact that Metal Sonic didn't kill Eggman implied that, well, it couldn't be that he was programmed not to be able to kill Eggman, because if that was the case, he would have also had programming preventing him from betraying him in the first place. Unless he was always intended to be his heir when he died, and so he was just able to fiddle around with his own programming somehow. It's never really explained how he got to this point. To make it so that he was allowed to betray him by becoming his heir early, basically. Like, Metal Sonic must have cared about Eggman to not kill him, and instead lock him in a room. Like, this plot definitely has plot holes in it, but that honestly isn't enough to make it bad, because this plot actually looks pretty good in hindsight compared to Colors, doesn't it? See, Heroes' story is a lighthearted 3 Sonic game done right. It's not all obnoxious about it. Like, aside from a few bad lines, for the most part, it's lighthearted, but it's subtle. And like, there's even non-lighthearted dark elements, like the whole Omega says kill and other stuff. Like, you literally control a killer robot in that game. And like, there's Team Dark, so it's basically controlling a villainous team like in SA2, only unlike in SA2, they're not actually villains. So again, another shallow reference to the adventure games. Just like with the fact that they have a 3-day time limit, even though it's not like it's always enforced at the beginning of every cutscene, or in SA2, at the beginning of every cutscene, they would tell you how much time you had left. So they reinforce the tension of the story that way. And there's no tension when it comes to stopping Eggman's plans, because you have no reason to believe that he'll ever succeed in it. Or say Eggman, I guess Eggman came up with the plan, but Metal Sonic co-opted it. Like, the whole thing about him wanting to rule over Robot Kingdom makes no sense whatsoever. It was never even alluded to. Why would he come to that conclusion? Why would he get that as a desire? And why wouldn't, if he thinks he's the real Sonic because of a glitch, why wouldn't he just take over Sonic's life? Because you saw in Team Rose's first cutscene that he was able to disguise himself as Sonic. That's huge missed potential. Why didn't he try to take over Sonic's life then? Why didn't he at the very least frame him for something a lot worse than stealing a frog and a Chow? And for that matter, Team Rose's plot in general shouldn't have existed logically, because once Metal Sonic got a hold of the Chow and the frog for Chaos' data, which is good that they actually reference the adventure games by doing that. Like, they have an actual continuity nod to adventure games focus into the story in a mandatory way. You're never gonna see that in Sonic game ever again. But yeah, why? Like, Metal Sonic could have just gotten Chaos data from Froggy and Chocola. Some random Chow who just randomly shows up, because Queen couldn't just be on the adventure because she likes Amy. Oh no. Another thing is Cream. She's proven that the advanced games are canon, because Sonic doesn't look at her and go, "Who are you?" No, he clearly knows who she is already, and she introduced herself in Advance 2, so obviously the Advance games are canon. Just some people don't want to admit that because, ooh, they're on handhelds. Handhelds are trash. But anyways, it just doesn't really make any sense. Team Rose's story shouldn't have even happened, because Metal Sonic should have just gotten the Chaos data right away and then just given them back, or at least left them behind. Why did he kidnap them in the first place? It's about as nonsensical as Vanilla getting kidnapped in Advance 2. And Team Chaotix, again, their missions, which make them the big cat of the game because of how tedious it is, constantly looking for every single thing. Like, sometimes you can miss a few, but there's the first mission in Team Chaotix is the hardest mission in the game, and the worst one, no doubt. Like, the Torches mission is tedious, but at least you don't, well, you can miss a few. Like, there were 3 different points where I needed to look up a guide for Team Chaotix. Hand Castle, Mystic Mansion, and the Hermit Crab mission. That's the worst part of the game. Because they're so tiny. Like, sometimes the Chaotix can give you hints about where the items to find are. They can mention that you have to do stuff, but it's still easy to just walk right past stuff and overlook stuff. I don't think that should have been a Sonic game. Sonic's about exploration, yes, but the level design is so linear that's going to naturally lead you into a lot of the items anyways. Like the Chow mission, it's really easy. So some of the missions are okay. But Team Chaotix in general is just the definition of padding. It shouldn't have been the game, it should have just been some sort of bonus mission thing that you got to play as after beating the game or something. Like, the whole concept of missions just makes no sense, because Eggman shouldn't have been telling them to waste time with that to begin with. At least Team Sonic's story makes sense. Team Dark's story is like, it's basically just a prelude to the unnecessary Shadow the Hedgehog game. I say necessary because they didn't need to give him amnesia in the first place. In fact, Shadow's amnesia feels like an afterthought, because there's a lot of lines where it implies that Shadow doesn't have amnesia. Like, he goes, hey look, it's that hedgehog. And Rouge doesn't even react to the fact that he clearly needs to remember who Sonic is. And he talks about how some things never change when Rouge talks about wanting to steal the Master Emerald. So it kind of feels like the amnesia thing is just an afterthought, because he barely ever mentions it at all, and sometimes he outright contradicts it. At the very least, it does show that he's objectively a hero, because the very first thing he does after escaping the cloning pod is save Rouge's life from Omega. Which makes the fact that you have a game about determining Shadow's morality come out right after it seem very unnecessary. He's already made clear he's a hero, like in all the games that he was in before that. But yeah, Heroes' plot isn't perfect, but at the very least it's not constantly shoving comedy down your throat. In fact, the comedy in the game is actually really good. Like, there are some jokes that actually make me chuckle. Like, on guard. Guard on! Get them! Like, Team Chaotix actually made me laugh there. And there's also, well, I can't really remember right now, but yeah, sometimes it can actually be a pretty charming game. Oh yeah, like, sometimes the typos in the script can be really funny. Like, looks like we're in jam, boys! Evil must die! Beware my ninja powers! And sometimes, like, I like the character banter in the sense that it kind of makes it feel more like these characters are actually together on an actual adventure together. Like, I hate it for Team Rose, wish you could turn it off, because it's a team of annoying voices. That's probably, like, it's a joke team, the easy mode mockery. I guess they must have known that the voices were so annoying, because it is the easy mode after all. But yeah, I like the character banter for the most part. I don't think the voice acting is bad at all for the most part. Like, Tails' voice sucks, but other than that, it's pretty... Tails' voice sucks, Big sucks, and Cream suck. But the voice acting itself is really good, certainly a lot better than Adventure 1. And the body language is at the best it's ever been. Like, at that point, it obviously gets better by Unleashed. Like, the presentation is really good, not that that really matters in a video game. Like, the graphics are really good. Like, honestly, it looks really great, because it's about a classic aesthetic. Like, I love the fact that Sonic Heroes is the closest there is to a 3D classic game in structure, because obviously Adventure 1 is literally just classic gameplay in 3D. Which makes me wonder why classic fanboys hate it so much, when it's literally what they want in 3D. But I love how Heroes is basically... It has, like, the Act 1, Act 2 structure. it's like Sonic 3 and Knuckles, where it has long levels in Act 1s and Act 2s that share aesthetic. So stuff like that. It has a boss at the end of every level, and it has a lighthearted tone until the end when things get serious. And even has Metal Sonic back, and the Chaotix from Knuckles Chaotix. I like the redesigns, especially Vector's, but I absolutely hate the fact that, one, they forgot about Mighty, although he was a Sonic clone anyways, so it doesn't really matter, I guess. And Ray definitely deserved to be forgotten, because I just hate his design. I guess it's superficial. I don't really know his personality, though. I'm sure it was pretty bland. But the point is, I don't think they should have rebooted the Chaotix. I think they should have just... There's no reason they couldn't have just kept Knuckles Chaotix canon. And it might as well be, considering that they don't look at Knuckles and go, "Who are you?" And Knuckles doesn't look at them and go, "Who are you guys?" I mean, Team Dark suspects them of being evil, so clearly they're obscure in that sense. But Team Dark wasn't really famous enough to be not aware. Like, Team Sonic doesn't not recognize Team Chaotix. Like, even though they're new characters, no one really needs to be introduced to them. They're never saying, "I'm Espio, I'm Vector," stuff like that. So even though they're new, it's not really that big of a deal. It's just like with Cubot and Orbot, it's like they were always there. Which is good, because they should have always been there. They're good characters, I guess. They're a comedy trio. I think they don't really feel like enough of a family. They bicker too much, so they're kind of... I don't know. Espio's boring, Charmy is annoying, and Vector is kind of adult. Although he does figure out that Eggman was the one giving them the orders, but that just makes everyone else look like a complete moron because they weren't able to figure out the obvious. It seems very out of character for Espio to be fooled. Charmy I can get, but... Another thing is, why did Charmy not know who Eggman was? Why was he all like, "Doctor Who?" How can anyone not know who Eggman is? But yeah, the story isn't perfect, but at least it's not being obnoxious about its lightheartedness. I think if the lighthearted break after 06 was like Heroes, instead of like Colors trying to be funny in a Sonic game, I think it would have been a lot better well received. There's a few moments of corniness, like with the superpower of teamwork, but for the most part, it's a great tone and a great story. Like, there's some plot holes, but other than that, the only really bad writing is in the character battles that shouldn't have existed in the first place. Well, the bosses were easy, so I appreciate that. But, yeah. It's a really good game. I'm glad I've played it. I don't know why people say it's a generic platformer when you can fly around, do all this cool stuff with the power type. I guess I talked about the level design, but it has action set pieces. What kind of generic platform has action set pieces? Yeah, I'm glad I got to play it. I like it more than Adventure 2, which I grew up on, so that says a lot. I'm not sure if I like it more than Adventure 1, though, because I just like taking shortcuts in that game with Sonic and Tails so much. And I think the ideal 3D Sonic game would be a lot more like Adventure, but Heroes was a good diversion. Like, it was a good, unique gameplay style. I don't know if they should go back to that. Like, that should be the ideal 3D Sonic formula, but it is really good. It's a good attempt. It just seems inherently misaimed that it's all about, the whole marketing was about bringing classic fans, like, being a better bridge between the Adventure era and the Adventure era. A better bridge between the Adventure era and the Classic era. But the problem is that with such a complicated gameplay style that has so many different mechanics you have to learn, if someone who only played the classic games tried to play Heroes, they would hate it. And I've seen evidence of that myself. So, having such a complicated gameplay style, then having a more classic marketed game, it feels very confusing and misaimed in the marketing.